All right. I'm just going to go. All right. So I'm going to start with novice. It's hard for me, like I see butterflies, like I lose my focus mid-sentence sometimes. So in order for me to focus, I need to really concentrate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through novice. So if you have questions, jot them down on a piece of paper. When I finish novice, then post your questions, because then I'll be able to look over at your comments. All right. Because if I'm watching them as I'm talking, it's just it's gonna be a nightmare for me. I'm gonna struggle. All right, so let's start with novice. What we can and can't do. It starts outside the ring, right? You want to make sure you get there early enough so that you can check in and you have enough time to get yourself organized and acclimated and your dog ready and acclimated, right? Because you don't want to get there late and be rushing around. You're only going to stress yourself out. You need to check that board frequently, right? Because some people, so you might check in and say, oh, look, the two people in front of me aren't there, but those people might come in later, right? Or vice versa. So check the board repeatedly so you're not caught, unaware, so that you know how many dogs are in front of you. If you're the first or second dog, if you go up to the ring to the judge like 15 minutes, give or take, before the class starts and nicely ask them, tell them, hey, I'm first or second. Can you please show me the ring setup? And they'll either do it then or they'll say to you, come back in 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. They're very nice about it. They'll make sure that with plenty of time before the class starts, they'll show you where you're going to set up for the healing pattern, which side you're going to be on for the figure eight, where the stand is going to be, and so on. Now, some judges will mark it on the floor, or they'll put they'll tie like a ribbon to the ring gate or something, so there's a marker there. Some judges do not. They just show you approximately where you're going to be. All right, so that's important to know because when you enter the ring, you don't want to be disconnecting from your dog to figure out where you're going. You want to be able to walk in the ring and know exactly where you're going to go to start every exercise, right? It's just going to make it a lot smoother for you and your dog. So the judge will show you where everything is ahead of time. If you're not, one of the first dogs, then I like to watch the first couple of dogs so I can kind of see the flow of the ring, see exactly where I'm going to go for the beginning of every exercise. Now, once I know that, I go back to my chair, I close my eyes, and I kind of go through it, right, with my own dog. How am I going to enter the ring, and which direction am I going to turn? How am I going to approach the setup from, let's say, the heel on leash to the figure eight? So I kind of go through that in my head a few times, so it's in there, and when I go in the ring, I'm not kind of fumbling around, right? Ideally. I mean, things happen, but that's ideal, right? So, outside the ring, you do not need to be right by the ring gate. As a matter of fact, I am never there. It's too hard for my dog. Right by the ring gate, there's a lot of pressure and chaos. The stewards are there working at the stewards table. There's spectators around. There's people checking in. The judge is there on the other side. It's way too hard. If you sit there with your dog is just going to get flat. Your dog is going to get distracted. I find a space that's a distance away where it's a little quieter, it's a little more open, there's a little more space. I stay connected with my dog. I usually like to keep my dog moving. Sitting still for a dog it's the kiss of death. They're going to get bored, they're going to get distracted. So I like to keep moving. Or if we're not moving, my dog's doing tricks, right? So my dog's staying actively engaged. When the judge, I can see out of the corner of my eye when the judge is getting ready to call me. When the judge calls my number, I just heel with my dog connected into the ring, and I move immediately to the setup point, meaning the start of the exercise, right? There's no need for me to waste any time. Motion is my friend. It's going to keep my dog engaged. I'm going to get to the setup point. I already planned on how I'm going to approach that. I want to set my dog up immediately and hopefully correctly so there's no like fussing, because again, the more I fuss, the more the dog's going to get flat, right? So at this point, you can still talk to your dog. It's still free time, right? I set my dog up. As soon as I set my dog up, I start to tell my dog what's coming next, right? So I teach my dog what I call a pre-cue that says to my dog, we're healing, and my dog hops actively. I teach that so that he stays engaged, right? So when the judge sees that my dog's in position and my legs are together, my judge is going to say, this is the heel unleash exercise. Are you ready? If I'm ready, I will respond ready, and at that point, judging starts, right? If I am not ready, usually if my dog isn't quite ready yet, I am allowed to say something to the judge along the lines of not yet or almost or no, I'm not. And then you have a little bit of leeway, right? You can't take an inordinate amount of time, but you can take a little extra time to make sure you and your dog are both ready to go. I always like to take a deep breath first, make sure my head's on straight, everything's good, and then say ready. All right, so once you say ready, judging starts. So then the judge will say forward and the heel on leash will begin. If your dog is struggling, you can give your dog a second command, like to heel. So let's say my dog lags, right? Or my dog is like forged, or I can tell my dog's just kind of like, oh God, I don't know what to do. You can say heel again. It's just points off, all right? And you can continue on. Now, personally, if my dog is having a hard time in the ring, I will always help them. I will flunk without blinking an eyelid. I don't really care. I'm more concerned about helping my dog, right? That's what I prefer to do. Now, within reason, if my dog is struggling, I can give him an extra couple cues, extra couple verbal cues, maybe a little pat on my leg. I can't do anything too crazy because then the judge will say, and they have a right to say that's training in the ring, and they may ask you to be excused. Again, personally, go ahead and excuse me. I'm going to help my dog, right? But assuming everything's going well, you finish the healing pattern, and when the judge says exercise finished, you can now praise your dog and you can start your transition. What's a transition? It's what happens from when the judge says exercise finished, and now you communicate with your dog, and you can move to the figure eight because the figure eight is next, right? So you should train that in training. It should be choreographed and well rehearsed. What can you do when you're transitioning? You can talk to your dog. You do not have to heel. You could do something like Janice Gunn teaches a finger follow, or you could, your dog could just go with you, right, in a looser kind of way. You could ask your dog to do a few bounces, maybe a spin. You can, if you do that quickly and you're moving and you're efficient, that's fine. You cannot like do something like a sustained nose touch because that's considered guiding your dog. You are only a novice allowed to gently guide by the collar. Um, some people have done that. Ideally, and I think that ideally your dog is trained enough that you don't need to do that, right? Because if you're doing that, it means like your dog isn't following your verbal or physical cues and they need that extra help. But it is an option to gently guide them by the collar, right? But ideally, you've trained a transition that you practice and do in training all the time, all right? So you get to the figure eight spot, you set up your dog. Again, as soon as you set up and the judge thinks you look like you're ready, the judge is going to say, this is the figure eight exercise. Are you ready? If you're ready, you will respond ready, and the judge will say forward, and the figure eight will start. Again, if you're not quite ready, if you need a few more seconds, you're free to say I'm not, or no, finish getting ready, and then say ready. When you say ready, that tells the judge you're ready to go now. All right. So the figure eight, when the figure eight ends, and the judge will say exercise finished. Again, now you can praise your dog, you can release your dog, you can start your transition into the stand for exam, right? So for the stand for exam, you know that Stuart is going to come to take your leash. I try to set the dog up so that I can hand the leash to the steward without the steward having to really infringe on my dog's space, because that's pressure. They don't like that. It's hard for them, right? So you give the steward your leash, and then you can set your dog up. Then you put yourself in heel position. The judge says this is the stand for exam exercise. You may stand your dog and leave when ready. When you stand your dog, you can help put them into position. You can kind of like stack them like they do in the breed ring. I don't do that. I just teach my dog to stand on cue. My dog stands and they're square. But you are allowed to kind of, arrange their feet and make sure they're stable. But then before you leave your dog, you must make sure you are in heel position. So let's say you moved and you adjusted your dog's back feet. Put yourself back into heel position first, then say to your dog, wait, or whatever cue you're going to give to your dog. Move away from the dog, turn and face the dog. The judge examines the dog. Then the judge will say, return. You have to walk around the dog back into heel position. Wait until the judge says exercise finished. Then, again, you can release your dog. Praise. Do your transition to the heel off leash exercise, right? So you know where that is because you were there before. So you're going to... Oh, someone says, see, oh God, I can't look. See, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Okay. Back to the heel free. So I use the time and transitions to talk to my dog. I don't talk incessantly because then it's just white noise, right? But I'll give them information. Wow, buddy, that was really good. I'll remind them up here, good boy or girl. I tend to do kind of modified healing transitions, and then I set my dog up for the heel free. Same procedure. When the judge thinks I look like I'm ready, they're going to say this is the heel free exercise. Are you ready? And if you are, you say ready. If not, you don't. You say you need more time. You do the heel free, exercise finished, and then you're going to transition to the recall exercise, right? So again, I know where that's going to be. I have a plan on how I'm going to approach that spot. I heel over to that spot. As soon as my dog sits, I tell my dog what's coming next. So my dog's ready and my dog's engaged. The judge is going to say, this is the recall exercise. Are you ready? When you're ready, you say, ready. And the judge will say, leave your dog. At that point, you can say wait, so you can say it and give a hand signal. Walk to the other end of the ring. Some judges will have a mark where they want you to turn around. Others will just be like, go to the other end of the ring. right? Go to the end of the ring, turn around, face your dog. The judge will either give you a verbal, call your dog, or a hand signal. Again, you'll know that ahead of time, right? Because you'll either have watched someone or the judge will have explained that at the before the class starts. You call your dog to front. You call your dog comes to front position. The judge says, finish your dog. You finish your dog, and the judge says, exercise finished. If your dog comes in and comes kind of directly to finish or kind of sort of halfway between front and finish position, the judges typically will still say, finish your dog. And then even if your dog's already in position, just tell them to finish again, because then you'll get credit for the finish. You'll just lose points for the dog kind of bypassing front. And then it's the sit, stay, get your leash exercise, right? Yes. So then when the judge says exercise finish, you transition to the sit, stay, get your leash exercise. I sit my dog. I tell my dog what's coming next. The judge will say, this is a sit, stay, get your leash. Are you ready? Ready. Go leave your dog and get your leash. So then you can say to your dog and give your dog a signal to wait. You go to the other end of the ring. You get the dog's leash will be inside the ring. You pick up the leash, turn and face your dog, wait for the judge to tell you to return, go around the dog into heel position, wait until the judge says exercise finished. You attach your leash and leave the ring under control. This is really important because it's a thing right now, right? Judges are watching for that. So you need to train your dog that when you put the leash on, you're not done. You need to leave the ring under control, which means the dog can't be pulling you. The dog, unfortunately, can't be bouncing up and down. I wish they could, but they can't. They can't tug on the leash. So your best bet is to either do like a heel out of the ring or do like a loose leash walking cue. So the dog's just walking with you, but not pulling you, right? Regardless of what happened, whether the run went well or not well, pay attention to your dog. Don't abandon them, right? So a lot of times people like they put their leash on and then they like look at the judge and go like, I don't know what my dog was thinking. Or they look at the judge and they're like, oh, I'm so excited. Don't abandon your dog, right? Stay connected to your dog. Leave the ring. Praise your dog. Tell them how awesome they were no matter what happened. And then you can talk to people, etc. All right. So that in a nutshell is novice. All right. So yes. So Lynn, thank you for helping that. Yes, you can use a verbal and a signal for the wait. So put your questions down now because I'm looking in here at what you guys are posting. Someone asked about pre-cues. So pre-cue is a physical and verbal cue that I use for pretty much just about every exercise. And I pair it with the exercise. So for healing, for stand, for recall, I have different pre-cues. So I use them every time in training so my dog learns to pair them. I also give the cue and teach my dogs on the cue to give me a behavior. My dogs bounce or do a trick I call the staring trick. Yes, please thank the judge. I don't know what the problem is with the volume. I don't like tech things. So anyway, so I teach them to offer behaviors on the pre-cue. This way they stay actively engaged. All right. you can talk to the dog between exercises. So when the judge says between when the judge says exercise finished and when you say ready for the next exercise, between those two things, you can talk to your dog the entire time. Um, all right. Oh my God, the questions are coming too fast. Okay. Um, so that's when you talk, right. So if your dog doesn't stop in front and goes to finish, sometimes judges will say, finish your dog, and the handler is like, what do you mean? The dog's already in finished position. Just tell your dog again to finish. Your dog will just probably stay there and be like, but I'm already here, which is fine, and you should still get credit for that, okay? All right, so the novice group stays. The group stays, you must have a 6-foot leash. They're gonna line you up outside the ring. They're gonna put you in numerical order. When you line up, try not to be on top of the dog in front of you. And I like to keep space in front and behind, right? Because it's hard enough for the dogs. You're going to go in. The judge is going to point exactly where he wants you to put your dog, right? He's going to come up to each person and say, you're going to put your dog here. I want you to put your dog here, and I want you to put your dog here. All right, so you can be talking to your dog at that time. It didn't start yet, right? When he's got everybody lined up, he's going to say, this is the sit-stay exercise. Are you ready? So at that point, your dog should already be sitting. Everyone's going to say, ready. And then he's going to say, leave your dog. You're going to give the verbal and physical cue if you want to stay. Move to the end of your leash. Stand there. Don't do anything. Don't talk. Don't help your dog until he says, return to your dog. You're going to go around your dog into heel position, but don't release your dog until he says, exercise finished. Then you can release your dog, tell him what a good dog they are. Don't spend too much time because you want to be ready when he says, when he wants you to get ready for the down, you want your dog already in heel position, right? You don't want to be caught behind the 8-ball. Judge is going to say same thing. This is the long down exercise. Are you ready? Everyone says ready, and he's going to say down your dog. At that point, you tell your dog to down. Hopefully your dog goes down. If you need to give it a second or third cue, go ahead. It's judge's discretion as to, points off or a failure. But I'm not going to leave my dog hanging, right? And then he's going to say, leave your dog. You're going to tell your dog to wait. Go to the end of the leash. Same thing. When he says return, go around your dog into heel position. Wait until he says exercise finish. Release your dog. But again, you're still in the ring, so you can't do anything super crazy. The dog can't start jumping all around, barking like crazy. You're better off doing a controlled, leaving the ring, so you don't have any issues with being considered quote unquote out of control, right? All right. Yes, after you get the leash and you're leaving with the dog under control, you can absolutely talk to your dog. Yes, you can. Could you talk about group stays? Bouncy hand touches between exercises. Yes, as long as you're not doing them like constantly, like bounce, 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 bounce. Like I try to walk a little bit, do a touch, walk a little further, do another touch, right? Depends on the judge. Usually, as long as you're efficiently moving from point A to point B, it's fine. Can you give a second command more than once? Yes. So for example, if you give a second command in healing, then you lose 3 points on your healing. You can do it again in the figure 8, you're just going to lose another 3 points, right? But hey, rather have points off than lose your dog, right? If they miss the auto sit, do you suggest giving command or letting it go? That depends on you. Me personally, I would tell my dog to sit. Because I don't know why they didn't sit. A huge portion of the time, it's actually the handler's fault. The handler gets nervous. They didn't cue the halts properly, and the dog's like, huh? Was that, did you tell me to hold? I'm not sure. So I just say, sit this way. My dog's good. My dog's not questioning anything. I'm just going to assume it was my fault, right? Some people let it go, right? It's just points off. It's your choice, right? Again, my philosophy is I'd rather help my dog and flunk than have my dog struggle, worry, be confused, be unsure, lose confidence. All right. Um, Between exercises, you can absolutely pet your dog. Yes. How should people get their dog's attention between exercises lately for things like gently tapping the dog on the head? They don't like you tapping the dog on the head. They prefer no physical interaction, right? If you don't I mean, other than petting, but if you're like tapping the dog on the head, they don't real judges don't typically like that. So what ideally you implement cues in your training that you can use. So for example, if I tell my dogs to either bounce or if I give my dogs an offering cue, my dogs will respond to that because it's so ingrained in them. So I can use that in the ring. So you could teach your dog certain cues that you reinforce super, super, super heavily that you can then use in the ring so that if you lose your dog, that helps you get the dog back. Sometimes just motion, like when people lose their dogs, they panic, they slow down, their voice gets really pitchy. They're like, Fido, Fido, and dog's like, oh God, I have no idea what's happening here. So you're better off just being like, come on, buddy, let's go. And like maybe running a little bit, you know, because motion tends to help them, right? Ideally, you don't lose them at all. That's the optimal way. But yeah. During how much jumping and personal play? Again, it depends on the judge. I wouldn't do too much. I would like pet my dog or be like, wow, buddy, you try to choreograph your personal play and training so that it's kind of happening like as you're moving, right? So that the less obvious it is, the better off you're going to be, right? You'll be able to do some if it just gets to be a lot, the judge may feel like you're holding the ring up, right? So practice it in training. You should be doing that anyway, right? So exercise finished. Wow, buddy, a little personal play. Then you do a little more play, like as you're moving to the next spot, set your dog up and you're ready to go. All right. Uh, my dog stopped to visit with it. Yes, if you call your dog and your dog comes back, you can keep going, right? The judge can decide how they're going to score that. But if your dog comes back to you, you can absolutely keep going. Um, must dog being as fixed? Oh no, no. For the stays, no, they can absolutely be on their hip. As a matter of fact, always put my dogs on their hip and stays because to them that's like a relaxed position. Being in a sphinx down means ooh something else is going to be happening, right? So yes, you can absolutely put them on their hip. Is there an invisible rule about not letting the leash touch the um the correct because you're supposed to go to the end of your leash and it's not supposed to be tight but just supposed to have a little loop. If your leash is touching the floor, it means you're closer to the dog, right? Because you have to be in order for it to touch the floor, I think. Yeah, or you'd have to hold your hand way down. So, yeah, I wouldn't let my leash touch the ground. Um, Again, during transitions, I wouldn't do too much jumping and chasing. Like if it looks like it's quote unquote out of control, right? Like the dog's being too wild, the judge might not like that. So I try to keep it, you know, not too crazy. If your dog gets up during sit or down stay, can you return to them? I think it's kind of judge dependent. I would sometimes if you start to go back, they don't. They might. want you to wait because you might be interfering with the other dog. You're better off if your dog gets up or down, as long as they're not moving away. Like as long as they're not, if my dog started to interfere, like look or go towards another dog, I would absolutely very calmly walk in, right? Or I might use my leash to keep the dog from doing that. But if my dog stands up and it's just standing there, I wouldn't go in because you're going to risk interfering with the other dog. All right. Um, yeah, I'd be careful with the ear thing. I mean, it's so annoying, but I agree that it might. Again, it's always like you don't want the judge to question it, right? Like, what if you have a really nice run and then you're doing T-touch and the judge is like, I'm not cool with that. If you could do the T-touch kind of like on the outside of the ear and make it look, you know, more petting wise versus holding the ear between your fingers. So like put your hand on the top, so the dog's ears are here, your hand's on top, and you're just kind of doing that. I don't think that should be a problem. The questions I'm answering are in the comments. So like people put questions in the comments. Oh, you answered that. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I think I got all the questions, hopefully. If there are more, all right. Hopefully not, because, all right. Okay, so now I'm going to go to open. I'll do open A. Um, the only difference with open B, obviously, um, is that the orders will vary, right? There are six different options, right? Which the judge will tell you ahead of time. I'm just going to jump over here real quick though. All right. Going in between exercises or at the end of an exercise, can I do a spin, touch, and heel? Yes, you can. So someone's asking about the cues, my pre-cues, what does that look like? If you go on my YouTube channel, I have a video on there that shows you exactly what I do. It would just take me too long to do that right now, and I still want to do open and utility. All right, so you can jump over there and look at that. Okay, so open. Same thing with open. You want to check the orders frequently. All right, you know what? It's my bad in hindsight with the questions. I should have read them out loud. It's my first time. Like I'm used to. Yeah, it was my bad. I should have read. Um, no, I should have read the questions out loud. So I'll do that moving forward. So somebody asked, do you have a pre-cue for novice stays? I do not, because the whole picture is different. I think it's just that my body's different. The picture is different. Do I have a pre-cue for novice stays? Oh my gosh, I have to think now. Yes, I do. I do. So they're not confused. I do. I do have a separate pre-queue for stays. If so, what do I do? You know what, Kathy? I cannot answer that right now because I can't remember. I can't remember. When I remember, I'll post it. All right. Back to open. If you're an open A, again, people check in at different times, so go back frequently to check the board, right? Open B, the board is a puzzle, right? Because people are in open, a lot of people are in both classes, there's a lot of conflicts, people show multiple dogs. So the board changes constantly. It's your responsibility to check it frequently, including up to 3 or 4 dogs before your turn, right? Um, so, oh, Terry's asking me If I want to stay with novice questions, we can do open and utility another time. Okay. I don't care. Whatever. I guess. Uh, so for stay pre-cues, let me think. I think I just pet the dog because I want them to be calm, right? Because I train my dogs to always be up, 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 right? So when I pet them, that's calming for them. So I'm pretty sure I pet my dog, and as I'm petting my dog, I say, sit, stay, right? And then what I do is I say stay. The leash is a cue as well. I turn when I face my dog. What I do is I cross my arms and I kind of like shift my weight onto a hip, right? So that it looks very different, right? Because my more formal stuff, it's always like we're standing up tall, we're standing up straight, and that's a cue to my dog, right? That means, oh, something's coming, we're doing something, be actively engaged, be ready to go. So I make it look very different, and then, you know, it's clear to my dog. Um, I mean, I'm okay with doing open and utility. Um, Terry, you can message me if you think that's a problem, but I think I'm okay with just blowing through them real quick. Oh, make sure I choose the option to save the live. I hope I can find that. I'll try. I don't know. All right. Anyway, let me just do open real quick. All right. Open, same deal as novice, right? Ahead of time, you want to know where everything is and where you're going to set up for everything. Okay. That's super important again because you want the flow. You don't want to be going, where do I go? Where do I go? Quite often they mark the floor. Quite often they put markers out. Again, if they don't, you pick your own markers, right? So like I know ahead of time if there are no markers, I say, oh, okay, I'm going to line up next to that stanchion or halfway between that stanchion or across from the steward's table. I pick my own markers so I know um, where I'm going, right? I want to watch what signals the judge is using for the drop on recall so I know ahead of time because they're all different in what they do. Um, Make sure you know the command discrimination order, right? Because been there, done that. You don't want to stand there and give the dog the wrong order and flunk your dog, right? You want to know all of that ahead of time and kind of have a plan in your head how you're going to move from exercise to exercise. I also want to know ahead of time, am I bringing my dumbbell in with me? Am I giving it to the steward? Am I going in the ring and handing it to the judge? Or am I putting it on a chair outside the ring? Those are all possible options. Same with your leash. Some judges, when you go in, some have you walk out of the ring and put your leash on the chair. Some have you hand your leash to the steward. Some will take the leash from you. Lots of options. So you want to know ahead of time what you're doing with your leash, what you're doing with your dumbbell. Right? For the retrieves, are you going to go get your dumbbell off the chair? Is the steward going to bring you the dumbbell? Is the judge going to give you the dumbbell? Same with when you're done. Sometimes you go and put it on a chair. Sometimes you hand it to the judge. Sometimes the steward comes and gets it, right? So you don't want to be fumbling around. You want to know all of that ahead of time so that it's nice and smooth and you can focus on your dog. All right. So open A, this order is always the same. It never changes, right? Open B, 1 of 6 orders. Judge is going to post it. Yes, when you're in the ring, the judge will tell you where to go next, but it's much better if you know, right? It's just much smoother. Sometimes the judge makes a mistake. Sometimes they're like, over here for the drop on recall. And I'm like, I thought it was command. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Now, We make mistakes too. I've gone to the wrong spot, or I've messed up, or I've been like, oh gosh, I can't remember what's next, right? Um, so that does happen, but overall, it's much better if you know. All right. So you're going to enter the ring. You have to go into the ring, and then you're going to get rid of your leash. Multiple options. It's judge's discretion on how that what's going to happen with your leash. So you're going to know ahead of time what you do with the leash, right? Then you're at this point you can still talk to your dog, right? You can still touch your dog, like pet your dog, or it's a transition. It's the thing you cannot do in open is you cannot touch your dog's collar. So you no longer can guide your dog. You can't touch your dog's collar, right? So you're going to transition to the first exercise. Let's say the first exercise is the heel free, right? Judge is going to say, this is the heel free exercise. Are you ready? If you're ready, you say ready, and the exercise starts. If you're not ready, you can say, no, I'm not. Take a couple extra seconds, then say ready, right? Judge is going to call the healing pattern. It's off leash, same rules apply. If you give a second command, it's points off. Um, you know, I always opt to do that if my dog's having a hard time, right? Exercise finished. Go to the figure eight if it's the A order, right? So again, now it's a transition. So you can pet your dog. You can do everything that you could do in a novice transition other than guide the dog by the collar. You can't do that. You want to efficiently go to the next exercise, right? So figure eight, set up. Judge is going to say figure eight exercise. You may go in either direction. Are you ready? Ready. And then the exercise starts, right? Exercise finishes. Command discrimination. Go to command discrimination. Set your dog up. You should know the order in your head. Some people write it on their hand and look on their hand. I don't. You can do that. No one, it's okay. Judge says this is a command discrimination exercise. Most judges will be nice and help you out and give you a reminder. It's going to be a stand down sit, right? Open A order is always the same. It's always stand down sit. Open B, depending on which order it is going to depend on which command discrimination order it is, right? So judge is going to say, stand your dog, you stand your dog, right? You can give a verbal and a physical cue to your dog, all right? If it's stand your dog and your dog does not stand, you failed, okay? However, you can continue if you want, right? You can just give your dog another command, stand, and then I say, good boy, because at that point I already flunked, so I'm going to help my dog out a little bit, right? All right, first position, judge says leave your dog. You can say physical and verbal cue, wait, go to the marker where the judge will either say go next to the jump, or there will be a marker there. You walk to that spot, you turn, you face your dog, you wait until the judge gives you a signal, and when the judge gives you a signal, you can give your dog a verbal and a physical cue to do the next position, right? And then you wait, the judge will say leave, you walk to the next spot, give them the next position change. The judge will say return to your dog. You walk back, go around your dog, stand next to your dog. Judge says exercise finished. And now you can praise your dog, transition to the next exercise. All right, drop on recall. The judge has the option to give you signals and or verbals. So again, the judge will tell you that ahead of time, like when, before the class starts, or you watch people ahead of you, so you go to the spot, set your dog up. Judge says drop on recall. Are you ready? Some will say drop on recall, I'm going to give you signal. They'll give you a whole spiel. Some will just say, are you ready? Once you say ready, the judge says, leave your dog. You walk down to the other end of the ring. Sometimes there's a marker, or sometimes the judge says, where he wants you to turn. Otherwise, just go to the end of the ring, turn around, face your dog. Wait for the judge to give you the signal or verbal. You call your dog. As soon as the judge gives you the signal to drop, you drop your dog, right? You can give a signal or a verbal, one or the other. Your signal should be brisk and clean. This is a held signal, right? You should not hold your signal. You should give the signal and put it down. The dog downs. The judge either says or gives you a signal to call your dog. You call your dog. The dog comes to front. Judge either says or gives you a signal to finish. You finish the dog. Judge says exercise finished. You're done, right? If the dog comes running in, the dog doesn't down, you give it another, which I do. I give it another cue to down. I flunked, but I helped my dog, right? I'm okay with that. I don't want to leave my dog hanging. So that's to drop on recall. Then when you go to your retrieve, again, you're going to know ahead of time, do I go get my dumbbell? Does someone bring it or to me, judge, steward, whatever? I go to the setup point for the retrieve on the flat. I have the dumbbell. I have my dog. Judge says retrieve on the flat exercise. Are you ready? Once I say ready, the judge will say throw it. At that point, I can say wait and I can give a verbal and physical cue to my dog to wait, and then I throw the dumbbell, right? Then I have to wait for the judge to say send your dog. I tell my dog I give my retrieve cue. Could be a verbal cue or a physical cue, one or the other. Dog gets the dumbbell, comes back to front. I have to wait for the judge to say take your dumbbell. So I say out. My dog gives me the dumbbell. The judge says finish. I finish the dog. The judge says exercise finished. All right. At that point, again, I can talk to my dog, right? Then I move to the retrieve over the high, set my dog up there. Judge says, this is the retrieve on high. Are you ready? I say ready. Throw it. When the judge says throw it, I can give my dog a physical and verbal cue to wait. Then I throw the dumbbell. Judge says send your dog. I tell the dog to get the dumbbell. Dog fronts. Judge says take it. I take the dumbbell out. Well, I tell my dog to let go of the dumbbell. Finish. I finish the dog. Finish can be a verbal finish or a hand signal, one or the other. Exercise finished. Get rid of the dumbbell. Depends on how the judge wants you to do that. Transition to what's left. The broad jump. Set my dog up at the broad jump, right? Make sure my dog's ready before the judge says. The judge will say, this is the broad jump exercise. Are you ready? I say ready. Leave your dog. I say wait. Get physical and verbal cue. Walk to where I need to stand. Now, so you have to be 2 feet back from the side of the jump. Some judges, a fair number, will put a line there. Make sure you stand behind the line, right? If there is no line, you have to guesstimate. I err on the side of being a little too far away because I don't want to be penalized for being too close. When the judge says send your dog, you can give a verbal or hand signal to the dog to jump. You must stay facing the jump sideways until the dog is in mid-air. You can't turn until the dog is mid-air across, like in mid-air going over the jump. Then you can turn, your dog lands, your dog comes to front, judge says finish, you tell your dog to finish, judge says exercise finished, you transition to the stand, stay, get your leash exercise. You get there, the judge says, this is the stand, stay, get your leash exercise. Are you ready? You say, ready. The judge says, stand your dog and go get your leash. So you tell your dog, stand. You can give them a physical and verbal cue. You tell your dog to wait, physical and verbal cue. You leave the ring. You must step outside the ring. Don't lean out. Step out. Pick up your leash. Step back into the ring and then wait. Right? Believe it or not, that piece people mess up a fair amount. So leave the ring. Pick up the leash. Step back into the ring. Wait. Do not return. I've seen people muck that up too. Wait until the judge says, return to your dog. You go back to your dog, walk around the dog into heel position, wait until the judge says, exercise finished, attach your leash, and leave the ring under control. In the B classes, they mean under control. And they've been hitting people on it. So your best bet, heel your dog out, or have your dog walk next to you calmly under control. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to go back to the questions and I'm going to actually read them out loud. Oh, that just jumped. All right. My dog won't sit on open ACD, only in the ring. I don't know what that means. So if you can clarify. Signal question. If you use a double pump stop sign, is that considered a double command? Yes, that would be. I would not do that. I would not do that. When would you advise using the fix and go? Oh boy, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I'll get to that at the end. For broad jump, verbal or physical to finish after front. Correct. Every finish you're allowed to give, in every class, the finish, you either a hand signal or a verbal cue, not both. All right. What are judges hitting people for on the way of the? Yep. So like somebody's dog did a bounce on the way out. They didn't like that. Obviously, if the dog pulls, if the dog grabs the leash, if the dog's just, I like if the person's not paying attention and the dog like kind of hits the end of the leash, even if they're not really pulling, I would just formalize it. It's your best bet. It's your safest bet, right? It's unfortunate. I'm not going to lie. I would like my dog to bounce out of the ring. I would love it if my dog could tug on the leash out of the ring, but they can't. So it is what it is. All right. All right. What to do when my dog won't sit in open A command discrimination ever? Oh, I can't answer. That's kind of outside the scope of this live, right? That's like a training issue. So I can't, that I would just be totally diverting. I'm just going over what we can and can't do in the ring, what the procedure is, what the judges say, that kind of thing. Okay. Um, in novice heel on leash on a. Do you recommend a shorter leash and then get your 6-foot leash for 6 and down so you don't have all the leash to deal with? What I do is I get a thin leash. For novice, I get a thin leash and then I take the end and I like I just kind of fold it into itself and then I just bunch it and then I just hold it in my hand, so that it's not a problem. Yeah, and I do that in training, so I'm used to holding it like that, and then it's not an issue. It doesn't like hang and get in the way. I just get a really thin paracord leash, a braided one, and then it's pretty easy. That's what I do. All right. Okay. Any more open questions other than the fix and go, which I'll do at the end? Is it okay to write the order of the exercises on the back of my hand? I don't really know. um, I wouldn't do it. I would be afraid that, and I don't want to, honestly, the thing is too, I don't want to look at my hand, right? I want to look at my dog. Because if you watch dogs in the ring, and everyone should do this, right? I want you to watch what happens every time the handler disconnects from the dog. So every time the handler looks away for any reason whatsoever, I want you to look at the dog. 99% of the time, that dog does not look happy. The dog gets nervous, the dog gets worried, the dog gets distracted. So ideally, I don't want to have to look away from my dog ever, right? Other than maybe I teach my dog a cue so that if I have to briefly look away, they understand what that means. But so that's why I would never write the order on the back of your hand. And like worst case scenario, if you're like, oh, I forgot, the judge will be like over there and you can see it out of the corner of your eye. All right, and then you'll know where to go. Um, Dog tugging on lead, bouncing, barking. Yeah, bouncing dogs. So leaving the ring. Yeah, so that's so Lynn is saying they're getting hit for a tight lead, dog pulling. I mentioned that. Tugging, can't do that. Bouncing, barking. Um, yeah, it is very subjective, but they are looking for that, currently. They're told that they're supposed to look for that, so they are. So err on the side of caution. That's all I have to say about that. You know, um, it's not worth the risk. It's not worth the point, especially if you have a nice class and then you get hit on that. Ugh, you're gonna be kicking yourself. All right. Okay. Utility. Utility, you for sure, if you can watch, you want to watch the signals your judge gives for the signal exercises because they all do it differently. And I've seen people um, fail because they didn't give their dog the signal or they gave it too soon because they misread the judge's cue. All right. So you want to know what the judge is going to do ahead of time. That's important. Um, you want to know where all the setup points are. I like to ahead of time kind of make sure that I know where the middle of the ring is for go outs. I don't want to set up my dog and be like, am I in the right spot? Do I have to move over? I kind of want to see if the judge doesn't mark where you stand for gloves. I want to kind of find that spot ahead of time and use a landmark so I know where I'm going for that, right? So ahead of time, I want to have this all planned out, right? I want to have my articles and my gloves ready. Nothing worse than like going to where are your gloves? And you're like, and then you get all stressed out, right? Have all that ready ahead of time. Um, when the dog ahead of you is in the ring, they want your articles and gloves there. So just bring them up there, right? This way, there's no drama or stress, right? Bring your articles up, hand it to them, say thank you, go get your dog, be ready to go, right? You're gonna enter the ring, same thing. Judge may take your leash. You may hang your leash on something. Sometimes there's a hanger there, so the steward might take your leash. Judge's discretion, right? Know where you're going, head to the setup point. All right, utility A, it's always the same order. Utility B, there's 6 different options. Judge is going to post which option it is ahead of time on that day. When you set up for signals, once you say ready, you can no longer talk to your dog. If you forget and you say heel, you're going to lose a bunch of points, right? Because it's signals. You're supposed to give only a physical cue to tell your dog that you're going to start healing, right? No verbal cue anymore. So you're healing along. The judge says, stand your dog. You give a physical cue, no verbals, to stand your dog. Then you wait until the judge says, leave your dog. At that point, you can give a physical cue to the dog to wait. And you walk to the other end of the ring and you turn around and you face your dog. You wait until the judge gives you the signal. At that point, you give your dog the signal to down. Again, you don't want to hold your signal. It has to be one continuous motion. So some people do something super elaborate, like, they bring their arm up, around, over, and down, and as long as it keeps moving, it's legal. I feel like if you have to do all that, then you're probably not ready to go in the utility ring, right? So you give your dog the signal to down, your dog downs, the judge gives you another signal. At that point, you signal your dog to sit. Your dog gives you a third signal. You signal your dog to come to you. Your dog fronts. The judge gives you a signal or a verbal. You finish the dog. Um, you can only use a signal because it's signals exercise, right? No verbal. Now, same scenario. Your dog gets stuck. Signals are super hard, right? So I give my dog the down signal. My dog doesn't down. I immediately give my dog another signal and say, down, good boy, right? And help my dog. That's me. That's what I do, right? Because I don't want my dog to be worried. I'll fix it in training, right? Or if my dog misses the sit signal, I just give a second signal and I go, sit, buddy. The dog sits. I go, good dog. And then I just proceed on. My dog finishes the exercise. I act as if they did it perfectly because I don't want my dog to be worried or stressed out. In any event, judge says exercise finished. Same transition rules apply. You can't guide the dog by the collar, but you can use a transition to the next exercise. All right, so we're going to go to articles. Now, there is a lot of variation here. The judge can decide where they are going to put your articles. They might be on a chair right in front of you. They might be in a chair way off to the side to where you will have to leave your dog to go get that article. That is allowed. That is the judge's discretion. So train for that. The judge typically, when you're sentencing, all right, let me just start at the beginning. All right, so you go to the setup point. When the steward, there might be a delay. Stewards are humans, right? Sometimes they're not ready, sometimes they're distracted, sometimes there's confusion. So there might be a delay. Plan for that. I train for that. So I have an option, if that happens, of what to do with my dog. When the judge is putting your articles out, you can show your dog the pile. It's not required, it's an option. What a lot of people do is they show the dog the pile and they're like, look at the pile, look at the pile, look at the pile. The dog's like looking all over the place. Because really, be the dog. What the heck are they looking at? Like, why are they going to stare at their articles? There's no reason for it. So tell my dog, I give my dogs a cue. That means look at the articles. If you watch my videos, my dogs don't even look. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, article pile out there, got it. Right? They know what's next. They're not dumb. So, dog's next to me in heel position. The exercise has not started. I can pet my dog. I can talk to my dog. And I do that. I pet my dog. I talk to my dog. Right? I want to keep my dog occupied and engaged. All right? Until the judge says, when you're ready, you may take your first article. So at that point, I tell my dog to wait. I go and I get the article. I put myself back into heel position. So it depends on, maybe I just need to lean forward and get the article. Maybe I need to step forward and get it because it's further away. Maybe I need to walk away and get the article. All valid, right? Go into heel position. Now at this point, I cannot touch my dog anymore. I can, however, still talk to my dog. All right? So while I'm sending the article, I can say, good boy, that's it. I tell my dog, you can talk, you just can't touch the dog, but you can talk to them. Then the judge at some point says, are you ready? And then once I give them the article and say, ready, I can no longer talk to my dog. All right. Now, most judges take the article and they go and put it in the pile. Some judges, this happens every once in a while, give the steward the article to put in the pile and they stand there. Um, and if you haven't trained for that, that can be very disconcerting for the dog. So I trained for that. All right. So judge puts the article out. You can't do anything. You have to just stand there, and it feels like you're standing there for 3 hours until the judge says, send your dog. At that point, you can cue your dog to pivot, right? So some people do like a scenting thing with their hand. I don't do that, but you can. I just say to my dog, I give my dog the pivot cue. We pivot. I finish the pivot. I give my dog a verbal cue. I say find. That's if you do a turn and sit. You can choose to do a turn and send instead. Oh, right, I forgot. While you're scenting, the judge says, how will you be sending your dog? You need to tell the judge. I say turn and sit both times because that's what I do. Or you could say send direct both times, right? If you're going to do a pivot and send the dog directly, your choice. Pros and cons for each. That's a different conversation. If you're gonna do the turn and send, then when the judge says send your send your dog, you're just gonna do your send direct, pivot and cue, right? Dog looks for the article. Dog brings the article back. The judge says take it. You take the article from the dog. Finish. You finish your dog, right? If you're now, as long as your dog is continuously scenting, it doesn't matter how long it takes them, right? That's not scoreable. But if your dog like stops and sniffs the ground or wanders and comes back, those are all things that are scoreable. And eventually the judge can opt to say, exercise finished. Like he can just deem that the dog is not working the pile and it's not meeting criteria, exercise finished, and then you fail. If your dog brings you the wrong article, I act as if my dog brought me the correct one. Because if the dog brought me the wrong one, I can't do anything to fix it at that moment in time. If I act upset or if I'm like, ugh, all I'm going to do is stress my dog out. It's going to accomplish nothing whatsoever, right? I just pretend my dog got the right article, and I move on. If my dog gets stuck in the pile and needs some help or needs to be redirected, I could say find it, or I could say good, that's it. I'm just going to flunk. That's all, right? My planet, not the end of the world, but FYI, you'll flunk, but I would rather help my dog. So exercise finished, right? I hold on to the article. I turn, face the pile, put my dog into heel position, and then the judge says, when you're ready, you may return and take the next article. So when I'm ready, I put that article back. I pick up the next article. Again, I can talk to my dog while scenting, but I can't touch the dog, right? So when the judge, I'm going to backtrack a little. When the judge says exercise finished, I pet my dog. Good boy, that was super, buddy, right? I like to release my dog out of the position just so they can move a little bit, put the dog back into heel position, hold the article. Now the judge sees me, he knows I'm ready, and then he says, return the article, take your next article. I do that. Sent, same procedure, right, as for the first article. So that ends exercise finished. I put that article back on the chair, and then I move to the next exercise. Those are gloves, right? So I transition to the glove. Now, if I feel because from watching classes, there's going to be a bit of a delay. I might wait a couple seconds, pet my dog a little more, because I don't want to head over to the glove and be standing there and waiting, right? But I go to the glove, I set my dog up. There is a little bit of a delay because the steward can't put the gloves down until you're in position. So while I'm waiting, I can pet my dog, I can talk to my dog, right? Until the judge says this is the glove exercise. So now I know the gloves are down. And then, I stop talking to my dog. The judge says, "Are you ready?" I say, "Ready." And he'll say, well, okay, so there's two options here. One option, the judge says, directed retrieve exercise. Are you ready? I say, "Ready." He says, "You have glove one." You're going to know which glove it is ahead of time. When he says you have glove one, you pivot. So I say to my dog, I give my dog a verbal cue. We pivot. I drop my hand to mark the glove. And as I drop the hand to mark, I send my dog. Dog gets the glove, comes back to front. Judge says, "Take it." I take the glove. Judge says, "Finish." I finish. Another option is the judge does not have to say, um, this is the judge can say, "Are you ready?" I say, "Ready," and the judge can say, "Glove one." They don't have to say all the other stuff. So some judges will just say, "Are you ready?" "Ready." "Glove one." And then you just pivot and you do the glove. All right? So just be prepared, because sometimes when people hear, they're expecting the judge to say one thing and the judge says something different, they get completely flustered. All right? So multiple options here. Okay? Again, exercise finished. You hand the glove. Usually, almost always, the judge will take the glove from you. And then you go to the moving stand exercise. So you do your transition. It's a moving stand exercise. Are you ready? Ready. The judge says forward. You can tell your dog to heel, right? Or you could just give a physical cue or a verbal cue. Heel. Judge says stand your dog. You can give a physical and verbal cue to your dog to stand, but you must do it as you're moving, and you must keep moving. If you stop, it's called the moving stand, because you got to keep moving, right? Make sure you go far enough, 10 to 12 feet. If you don't go far enough, scoreable. Turn and face your dog. The judge does the exam. You must wait until the judge says call your dog. You can call your dog to heel using a physical and verbal cue, right? And the dog can do a right finish or a left finish. Doesn't matter, either or, right? Come to finish, exercise finished. Directed jumping, right? So you head over to the directed jumping. Free time. You have time. You can show your dog. You can use your cue to show your dog the go out. If my dog's looking at the wrong spot, I can work with my dog. I can't physically maneuver my dog, but I can talk to my dog and pat my leg and try and help my dog find the correct spot, right? It's free time until I say ready. So I've had times where the judge said, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure my dog's locked on." I go, "I'm not." And I just make sure, I take a little extra time to make sure my dog's locked on. And I say ready. Once I say ready, I can't do anything anymore, right? If my dog looks off the go out spot after I say ready, I'm sunk, right? So I can either choose to flunk and help my dog orient them back onto it, or do nothing and just wish, hope, and pray, right? And the judge says, "Send your dog." I say to my dog, "Go," right? So my dog runs out. I have to decide when to time my sit cue. The dog ideally should sit about 5 feet before the end of the ring gate, so 5 feet shy of that. So if you have a fast dog, you might have to call a little bit sooner, right? Because they need to hear you, process, turn and sit. If you have a slower dog, it's a little bit easier, right? So you tell your dog to sit. If your dog stands, you could choose to lose the points and keep going, or you could say sit again and just lose points for the second cue, right? If the dog touches the stanchion, you lose points for that. So that's why I tend to call them sooner, right? But it's not a failure as long as the dog sits. Then the judge, you'll know ahead of time which jump is first, the bar, the high. The judge usually stands on the side of the jump you're going to go to. So if the first jump is high and it's to your right, typically your judge will be standing there. But that's not 100% guaranteed. The judge, that's not required. The judge can and sometimes will, not often, but occasionally they do, stand on the opposite side, right? So know which jump ahead of time, right? You send your dog to the jump. You can give a physical and a verbal cue to the dog to jump. But you must stay facing forward until the dog is in the air over the jump. At that point, you can pivot to face your dog. You don't have to. Some people stay facing forward and the dog just comes and fronts to them. That's legal. That's an option. It's the handler's choice. Or when the dog's in the air, you pivot and face your dog. The dog fronts. The dog tells you to finish. You finish the dog. Same routine for the second go out. Exercise finished. Then sometimes they want you to take your articles, some that are on the chair, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the steward brings you the leash, sometimes you have to move closer to the ring gate to get the leash. Again, judge's discretion. Attach the leash, leave the ring under control. All right, I'm going to go back and look at these questions. Can you speak your dog's name before giving your dog's physical signal and utility? Yeah, so for instance, on the go out, I can say zesty sit, right? Or I can just say sit. Either or, they're both fine, right? And usually you can say like zesty jump. I mean, I'm already giving a signal and a verbal, but you can, sometimes it might save you if the dog's not paying attention. Maybe it'll snap their head around sometimes, right? In command discrimination, yes, you can use the dog's name. So Zaina sit or Zaina down, right? You can do that in command discrimination. Yes, you can use the dog's name and along with the verbal command and hand signal for command discrimination open. Yes. In go outs, what is the sweet spot to get your dog to hit? I know dead center, but is it 2 feet? Oh, it's ideally it's 5 feet. So it's 3 to 5 feet from the ring gate is ideal. What should be scoreable, which everyone doesn't score, but it should be, is if the dog gets all the way to the ring gate and then you say sit. Now, if you have a border collie and it's flying at Mach speed and you say sit and it responds instantly, but it slides and ends up close to the ring gate, that should not be penalized. Because your dog responded promptly to your cue to sit and it was done well ahead of time. But the dog's sliding. Now, some judges will hit that, some won't. Most won't. But if your dog gets all the way practically to the stanchion and then you say sit, that should be penalized. Everyone doesn't. Judge's discretion, right? On the moving stand, yeah. Can you? Okay, on the moving stand, you can give a verbal and signal. Does it have to be simultaneous? Yes, it does. You have to do it together, not one and then the other. That would almost be like they would consider that giving almost like two commands. You have to do it together. All right. Can you use your dog's name for command discrimination in utility? So you mean signals, I think, because command discrimination is, so I think you mean signals, right? No. Signals in utility, no words at all. Meh, zip it. So you can't use a dog's name. You can't use any words at all. Zero words. None. Hand signals only for signals. All right? Okay, for the go out, I tell her to look with my hand pointed towards the station. Then I put my hand back at my side. My question is, can you use a verbal and signal to send her? Oh my gosh, I don't know this answer. I want to say yes, but I could be lying. Trying to picture it in my head. Because I have seen some people use their hand. I don't know. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. I'll look it up and I'll post it somewhere. Maybe here. Maybe I can post it here later. I don't know. Sorry. Oh, somebody else said the answer. It's yes, you can. At least somebody knows the rules. Yeah, I don't, so that's why I don't know. But yeah, I thought because I feel like I have seen people do both. Um, yeah. Okay. On the judge's order, the handler will command and or signal the dog to go forward at a brisk gallop to a point about 20 feet past the jumps in the oh right, you're talking about the go out in the approximate center of the unobstructed end of the ring. So basically what it happens is that if you calculate, for me, it's harder to judge 20 feet past visually, right? It's easier for me visually. So what I do is when I'm outside the ring, I look at about where 5 feet in is. Like I feel like I can kind of mark that more easily, like, and visualize where I'm going to sit my dog to hit that spot versus picking a spot that's 20 feet past the jumps, right? So if the ring is 50 feet long, then from the jump to the gate it's 25 feet. So that means 20 feet past the jumps means 5 feet in from the gate. Whew, can't believe I worked that out. Okay, so that's why I figured it out. That's why I do it that way. It's just easier. I think it's easier for most people to see it that way. All right. All right. So I don't see any other questions. It doesn't mean there aren't any, but fix and go. Let me address that really quickly. All right. With the fix and go, you want to be 100% sure that you know why the error happened and that you can do something productive to help the dog be right. And if you are sure you can do that, then when your dog fails an exercise, you can say to the judge, I'd like to do a fix and go, and then you can redo that exercise, right? And help the dog be right. And then after that, though, you're done. You have to leave the ring. You can't finish with the rest of the class. The problem lies in, are you 100% sure you can help your dog and you know the root cause of the error? Because a lot of times, if you can't, you're just going down a rabbit hole, right? That's why I rarely actually use it, because typically I'm not 100% sure why it happened, or maybe it was a handler error, or maybe it was something that I don't feel I can productively fix in that moment in time. So that's really up to you to decide, right? Um, because I've had a situation where I thought I knew why my dog made the error, and then I did the fix and go, and my dog did the same error again, and then I went and looked on the videotape, and I was like, gosh darn it, I should have just left the whole thing be, right? My bad. So, lesson learned. All right, so let me see. I thought there were more questions. Um, what is the hardest glove in directed retrieve for a dog to get? I mean, arguably, probably glove three because when you pivot for glove three, you the dog if the dog's pivot is not perfect, they can see glove two and potentially get suction to that, right? So for me, the glove exercise is all about the pivot. If your pivot is good, then your dog is facing the correct glove and then there's no confusion. If your pivot is not perfect, then that leaves your dog open to seeing another glove. Right? Same with glove two, really. Glove two, the dog, if the dog under pivots, the dog could see glove one. If the dog over rotates, the dog could see glove three. So for me, gloves are all about the pivot. It's really a pivot exercise, personally, I think. Um, for utility signals, no. For utility signals, you cannot use the dog's name because there's too many. You can't use words. Okay. Any more questions? Going once, going twice. And then, oh God, now I'm under pressure. I got to figure out how to like end this video and save it. Um, okay. All right. Hope this was helpful, guys. Thanks for joining me. All right. I'm out. Okay, so end live video. Oh, all right. I hope I don't mess this up. If you aren't in this, you won't be able to choose. Okay, good.